Call special meeting to order, July 23rd, 7 o'clock p.m. This meeting will be talking about new business, a rate study, an ordinance, and a 1% sales tax question. That being said, we will start the meeting. Greg?
Yeah, thanks for having me here, and good to see you guys. And for Bobby, you know that I usually come with a spreadsheet. I didn't. That's the good news. But the bad news is it's on here. So we'll get. She's got the numbers put together if she chimes in here. I just wonder if she's in the lobby waiting. She could be. But I just want to kind of go over before she gets on how we want to talk about this. I know you guys recently did we Pam carried the ball here with you guys to talk about the different utilities that you guys made a move on a while back. This is just electric today that we're going to talk about because we were able to kind of delay that. Occasionally you had the different utilities kind of subsidizing or being subsidized by electric, so we broke those out so they're standalone, and we made the rate changes a few months ago. The electric wasn't, once we did that, it wasn't in quite as bad a shape, so we were able to delay that a little bit. And so today, we're here to talk about that. So it's not like the electric is far under where it needs to be, and it was fine last year. Kind of met the targets where we thought it would be, and it did that. But with cost going up and the things that we've seen increases, it's time to take a look at the electric. And it's been a while since we've done that. So we made some changes. So several years ago. So now we're looking at it today. It needs to be changed before this coming year. You're going to come up a little short if we don't do something soon. So that's why we delayed a little bit to separate it from the previous utility changes, but addressing it today. And certainly going into the summer, your higher usage and things like that, we needed to move forward with that. Now, what we're going to put together, and El Marie just joined us here. She's the analyst that did all the numbers and ran it. The way we did it, and El Marie, are you on?
I am.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. So the way she analyzed this, she looked at all of your cost today as opposed to the revenue that is projected for this coming year. And then we forecasted some increases, some straight line increases or strategic increases based on cost increases that on the different line items. So each line item is measured independently to see how it projects going forward. And then we looked at how much revenue needs to be transferred from the utility into the general fund of the utility of the city, and then also transfers into the electric reserve fund. So we have two transfers that take place that need to be covered by base rates. And then there's the cost of your wholesale power. And El Marie's going to, in just a second, it's going to show a few. We went ahead and looked at just for interest to show you how you guys are buying your wholesale power and kind of how that's looked over the years. Because the wholesale cost has had some highs, some spikes, and some dips, but overall it stayed pretty consistent. Now in 2022 we had some increases from our wholesale supplier because of natural gas increases that increased over the calendar year of 2021, and then that was passed through in 2022, which caused the price of electricity to go up. Natural gas tends to drive the trend of electricity, and that all happened. So in 2022, as we'll show you a slide, kind of spiked up, and so the costs were higher just through the pass-through component of the rate. You didn't have any rate changes, but we were passing through higher cost of the commodity and the power. So that's all been factored in. You have what's called a fuel cost adjustment. That's a critical component of it. And if you remember, it's been probably maybe 8 or 9 years ago, we changed that to a rolling 12 month, so it kind of flattened it out. So if you had a really high month of wholesale cost and we didn't pass it through automatically to the consumers, we leveled it out through a rolling 12-month average. So that's not going to change. However, we do have a change in methodology of the calculation. As the wholesale price has gone up and down, we identified that the way the formula was built in, and that was built in a long time ago, and then we just averaged it out. But it was calculated by adding losses in after we did the reduction of what's in the base load. So essentially it wasn't fully recovering as it should have. And it's been okay, but every year there's a little bit of a loss in that we then had to cover in base rates. We're proposing to fix that now. It's just a math change, and we'll walk through that. And that's part of what we're doing here. And then the other part is we're gonna have to just increase the base rates a little bit in order to cover your cost. And what we're recommending is we do it over a 4-year period, and we're gonna show you what kind of changes we project over the next 4 years. And this one now would be a year and a half, and then year 2, the next one would come in, and that would allow us to say that's going to project and cover your cost as we're projecting them for the next 5 or 6 years. Okay, so you won't have to do anything else for 5 or 6 years if you so choose. Now, and of course, if there's something really dramatic changes that was fixed cost down, like I mentioned, the wholesale cost, if that's dramatic, if wholesale costs go up or down, that gets passed through or added to the bill automatically. So we're not talking power price swings. We're talking things like insurance or labor rates or something changed dramatically. Then you would need to relook at that. But right now, we're projecting these normal industry standard changes, and if those don't happen, or they happen at a higher rate than we expected, then we can make an adjustment. Or if they didn't happen like we thought, you may not want to do one of the increases that we have in place. So we're putting 4 in place. Is it 4 or 3, El Marie?
You're talking about number of steps?
Yeah.
4.
4. Okay. So we're putting 4 in there, but then if all of a sudden we come to at that period of time, you can either delay through council action, or you could move it forward if we needed to. But this gives you a chance every year and a half to look at how it's doing and whether or not we actually need to make that step or not. So that's kind of the overall the recommendation, and then we're going to go into the specifics and how we're proposing to change ordinances to accommodate those changes. But that's why the thought was, instead of doing a big one right now that would cover us for 4 or 5 years and then be over earning for a couple of years, we thought we'd gradually. So hopefully that works for you guys. If it doesn't, we can take a look at it. But this is what it is. So El Marie is showing a slide. This is for background. This doesn't necessarily, but it shows you kind of your historical cost that has gone in there. So this is basically over the last 15 years, I think. We basically, it's just showing that that the line there shows kind of how your load is compared to your the price per kilowatt hour. That's the cost per, the total spend.
This is the total cost versus the total kilowatt hours.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So the total cost is the bars, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So you have the bars. So you can see your cost has gone up and down throughout the years. You know, back in 2014, we saw a general spike up, and that was when the SPP, which is the global market for the energy market, first went live. So there was a step up during that time when they changed the market structure for wholesale power, which we then buy into from our supplier, Midwest Energy. So that went in there. Then we negotiated a new rate, new contract in and around 2019, 18, and it's quite favorable, and we benefited on quite a bit of lower cost. So all these costs, as they went down, that gets passed through to your consumers, so they saw their rates going down. Meanwhile, we're not changing our base rate, so the city is staying the same, but the pass-through went in there. And then in 2021, we had the really big winter storm, which you guys benefited from because you were able to run your generation. You were able to do really good, and I think we talked back then on that. But in 2022, the market tended to react to that extreme year in 2021. That's what you're seeing happen right there in 22. Natural gas prices what drove that. The natural gas prices went from $2-ish number in 2021 until the winter storm period came in, and then they dropped back down, but then they ran up in 2022 up to $8 or $9 in that particular time for MCF, which that caused the market price of energy, electricity to go up as well. That settled back down, and that's where it's been setting over the last couple of years, and that goes through, I think it goes through current year-to-date 2025, and so you can see how that's leveled off. And then your usage is the line to show you, is that correct? Is that price per megawatt hour, or is that total volume of energy? Marie?
This is volume of energy
Yeah.
and volume of dollars spent.
Yeah, dollars spent.
If you want the cost per megawatt hour, that is right here.
Yeah. So that one line we saw, the red, showed you your usage was fairly flat. The dips and stuff in that were mostly reflective of weather conditions. Okay, so as weather, if it's mild temperatures, you tend to have a drop in your usage. But that's all important because our cost, or we buy our cost and then we charge it based on a rate per kilowatt hour. And if you're not selling as many kilowatt hours, you're not recovering the revenue you thought you were going to recover. That we basically forecasted it out consistent because you don't have a big flow. You haven't like lost a big customer or things like that. So this shows you your cost per kilowatt hour. So it's the total cost that we just looked at divided by the number of kilowatt hours you sold and or purchased, and then this shows you what that's done. So you can see in 2021 it shows that same curve on your total spend, jumped back up in 22, and then it came down and it's flattened off a little bit. Okay, that's just to kind of show you a little bit about your background. Elmer, you want to go to your next slide?
Which one do you want, Greg?
Well, the chart, the chart of
Here's
your
the total
component.
consumption.
Yeah, this is your total consumption, which is the kilowatt hours from 2010 to 2015, and that trends as we show. That's every year, for each month. So you can see you obviously use more in the summer, higher summer, and that's where we're at today. So that's why we needed to move forward on this rate change. You tend to use, 30 to 40% more during the summer, or you sell more and you also buy more, obviously. So that's kind of shows you the trend and where we're at right here in June, July is right there at that peak usage time. So, Elmer, you want to go to the next one where it shows the different components?
Well, I'm trying to get it to let me. These darn screens that tell you you're sharing,
Yeah.
a big chunk at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
And I'm having trouble getting it to let me move it.
Okay. Well, all I was going to show you there was the different components of the purchase power cost that you do. Basically, you have different components. It's not necessarily critical for what it is. I just want to show you a little bit of the background, but you do have capacity payment. We have done some stuff with Midwest Energy where we were able to remove some of our capacity costs that we had to buy, and then you cover that capacity with your own generation. The capacity market has been really flat for 5 years. It's getting ready to almost triple in cost because the demand for electricity in this area, and really all areas, has just skyrocketed. The data centers and things like that going in there, sucking up a lot of the power. So, so we're seeing the price of capacity, the market of capacity has gone from $2 in this area to like $6 right now. So that's gonna. But because you have a power plant, you're not having to buy into that. Okay. that's covering your own load, so you're exempted from having to buy that. So a lot of times people look at those power plants and say, well, if it's not running a lot, how is that value, create value for it? It's create value because that's helping us to not have to buy accompanying capacity, which is in an increasing market right now. So having that plan is why we've been able to avoid that. And so I don't know that, so it just shows you that if you look at that red line, that's the demand that we've had to pay Midwest Energy. That's a portion of it. It's dropped off now. We're not having to buy that anymore. We had two pieces that we bought. We bought some from Midwest Energy at the time. We used to have a grocery store over here, and then when that went away, like really quickly, we were able to negotiate with them and drop that. I don't know if you remember that. You were here at the time. So were you at the time. We dropped that. We got out of that, which was great. That saved it. But we still retained a piece of it just to cover our load, to cover demand. And so we cut that amount in half when that store went away. And then now we've dropped it off altogether to reduce our cost from Midwest Energy. So our cost is, as you can see, is $40, 40.5 in 2020, and it's now 47.4. So it's been fairly stable. It's coming back down from when it went up in 2022. But that's all getting passed through our fuel cost adjustment. And so while we want to be cognizant of it, we want to be vigilant on negotiating the best deals we can on the wholesale cost, and we want to be smart on running our generation. It isn't something we're trying to cover with rates today. Okay, so that's already covered. That gets covered through that mechanism. So, all right, Elmarie, now we got some numbers here, and I think you might have a summary here, but she's going to walk us through her methodology for calculating new rates.
Didn't you want to talk about
Yeah,
this first?
that's true. Yeah. Okay. So now we're back to rates. That was all wholesale cost. The rates on where you guys. I just want to give you a little bit of background. Go ahead.
I just question on the fuel cost adjustment
Right.
and the pass through.
Right.
So I didn't see in this ordinance any mention of that fuel cost adjustment because we're not touching it, I'm assuming.
No, it's in there. It should be in there on this in the second page.
On this thing.
It's a formula. You'll see a formula.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
You see that formula?
Yeah.
What was going on there? Just to give you an idea, what we're correcting on that. So that's changed. That's the new deal. The only difference is we're passing. It's the same thing. It's a mechanism that takes your total cost of your purchase divided by your total sales, gives you cost per kilowatt hour, and a piece of that is included in base rates. But everything above that or below that gets passed through either as a credit or a pass through. And it's always an adder now because the amount we have in base rates is almost always below. I think there was a credit in 2021 when you guys did so good on that winter storm thing, but generally it's going to be a pass through. The way the formula was working, it's just a math change. It was taking the total cost minus the amount that's in base rates times the loss adjustment. So you buy, if you buy, and the loss is basically physical heat loss of transporting power or what the city's using itself. So loss is a general term, but the difference between what you buy and what you sell. Okay, so if you're using it, you're not selling it, or if it's getting lost in heat across the wires, you're not selling that. So we have a loss factor. But we were taking, the formula was taking the difference and then applying the losses, where the right way to do it is to take the difference before you subtract out what's in rates, and then you apply that loss calculation. So it's just changing the place where, the exact same thing, it's just we're changing the place where we factor in that 11% loss number. So that's what it is. But that generates additional revenue for the city that we're currently not getting because the way it was being calculated. So it's not really that additional revenue is reducing the losses further based on math calculation.
Is there a reason that, I guess maybe it's because of the losses, but why our rates aren't set up in a manner that, like, your per kilowatt hour rate is what we're buying from Midwest plus an adder?
Well,
I mean, it sort of is through the cost adjustment,
right,
but is there a reason why it's not just like, okay, we're buying it at 8 cents, and so no matter what, we're just gonna sell
add on a
it
flat
at
amount.
5 cents, so it's gonna be 13 when we buy it at 8. If we're buying it at 10, it's gonna be 15 cents. Like, is there a reason that we don't do it that way?
That way, I mean, essentially that's what we're doing. Okay, you have two things. You have, essentially that's what you're doing, but it's just not, the adder's just not there. It's taking, we're putting in so much, and Elmer, correct me, I want to say 3.5, but I think that's not right. Is in the base rate? How much
The
of the?
base was, I think, it has been, I think, 3.2.
Okay, so we have 3.2 cents, that's the pass-through, so you have 3.2, and then like I was showing you, let's say the cost is 4.7, or let's just say it's 5 or something. So you got 5 cents from our wholesale cost, plus the 3.2 that's already in there. So, and then everything above that is that adder that you're talking about. It's just not a flat adder. So there's two components, and one of the reasons we don't just do kind of what you're talking about is because you're you have to be
No, 2.16.
2.16 is in the base, so you have 2.1.
2.16. Somebody else was 3.2.
Yeah, okay, that's how much we just built into rates. The rest of it is that pass through. So if you said, like what you're kind of suggesting is we just say it's 5 cents plus 6 cents. And the thing is you have a customer charge that we need to put in there. You need to have some sort of a fixed component because that's not tied to the volume of energy. Because then every time you have a lower summer, if those numbers, if it's a real mild summer, you won't sell as much, and then you don't cover those fixed costs that you have, like your wires, your transformer, your generator. You don't even cover those fixed costs if you're not selling the volume. So if everything's tied to a volume, so we kind of break it up. So you have a small component, and quite frankly, your number, that's one of the things we're doing is moving that customer charge up high. In most utilities, they've moved it up way higher because that's something that you're not having to sit there and wait for, because all of your cost of your system that's not contingent upon actual energy flowing across them, like the wires or like the trucks or like this place, everything that you cover in the cost isn't going to go down if you're not selling the same volume. So we try to break it up and add a component that's not related to the volume that you sell. And then the rest of it, the energy cost is tied to the volume. And that's just an adder, that's all we do. So you have a fixed amount, and that's tied to that. That's the amount that you're charging above that. So that's kind of, if that answers your question. That's just,
Yeah, I guess I wasn't really questioning like the meter charge necessarily.
Yeah.
But just that the cost of energy is adjusted through the fuel adjustment, because I guess, and it's over 12 months.
Right.
Which is good, because I'm just like, if we're selling electricity at 11 cents
Right.
a kilowatt hour, well, next month natural gas quadruples, and we're having to buy electricity from Midwest at 18 cents a kilowatt hour, then all of that's going to have to be caught on the fuel adjustment.
Correct.
It's not on the electric rate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So some people, I mean, sometimes you say, I'm just gonna take, I'm not gonna have a fuel cost adjustment. I mean, you can't not have a fuel cost adjustment, because then you're taking this risk that you can't recover. Because you don't have any control over whether somebody's using it or not. So if price of power went up north of 11 cents, then and you were fixing your price at 11 cents, then you're not gonna recover your cost. Now, if you said, I'm just gonna tack on a certain charge, and quite frankly, some people are doing this, some utilities are saying, I'm just gonna do what you're saying, just take the fuel cost, whatever I buy plus this amount. And, you can do that, but the reason, we kind of look at it as, you need to have, the city knows that there's some cost that needs to be covered. You know that, and you also know the power is not gonna be free. So we're gonna cover with our rates that amount that we're sure is for sure gonna happen. In this case, it's like you said, 2.5, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And then everything else that we charge is to cover our fixed cost. There is that's what we're doing, and it's just it is the difference between that number and the numbers that we're proposing here.
Sure.
So that's all we're doing.
Yeah.
And we have certain expenses that need to be met, and we're just adding on to those, and we haven't really moved it and changed that amount, but it's just not. I guess maybe it doesn't sound quite as simple in here, but that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I understand that we're covering our bases with that. I was just, I'm picturing in my head someone who doesn't understand that utility rate, they get a bill in their electric charge for the amount of kilowatt hours they use. Let's say they use the exact same amount in June, July, and in August. So they see that, and that rate is the exact same. But then because, for whatever, there's a natural disaster, for whatever reason, electricity we've got to buy at a really, really high rate, then they're like, why is the city's fuel adjustment charge
So
$50 extra this month?
Yeah.
Versus last month when it was $14.
Yeah.
Because that fuel adjustment charge isn't as clear as I use this much. This is what the kilowatt hour costs.
I know. That's
so
true.
that's why I'm just curious why it's built in that way versus.
You're right. It's just saying that the city, since the city is really the only entity that does understand it, we think that we're, instead of just carving it out and just saying we're washing our hands of it, you guys just pay, you'll pay whatever the cost is. We'll say we're gonna manage it a little bit. We're gonna have some amount of it covered in our cost, but we can't hold the bag by ourselves, so we're making a fuel cost adjustment. But you're right, the fuel cost adjustment is confusing sometimes. I mean, I have to tell you, that's the city. It wasn't this one, but another city. I was talking about the fuel cost adjustment, and after I'd gone through the whole thing, then the question got asked about how does the cost of gasoline in the police cars affect why does that affect our electric grid? So I clearly had done a poor job explaining it because it had nothing to do with that kind of fuel.
Sure.
And quite honestly, I just even aired today that it's fuel cost. The reason that everybody has used that word fuel cost, because it used to be the fuel cost that went into your generator, and when this was, the generators were serving the town, and that was your power source, it was fuel cost.
Yeah.
It was the fuel for that generator, and whether the price per gallon was $8 or if it was $2, that was a fuel cost adjustment. Really, right now, it's a purchase cost adjustment, which includes your fuel cost. And so that's why we have that, because we have the fuel, we have both the fuel that goes in your generator when you do run it, and the purchase cost of buying the power wholesale. That's our cost adjustment minus what we've included in rates already. So, there's other ways to do it. This is what it was. When I first started with you guys, and it was like in 2002, it was really running short, because that's right when power prices started going up. Before that, it was always really low, and the wholesale cost was really low, and it wasn't ever needed. And so the first thing I did is I came here to build a fuel cost adjustment to get you guys out of a situation where you were going to be losing money when the price of power, you were selling it for less than you were buying it for.
Yeah.
And you can't sustain that very long. Well, I sat down here with all my papers to get ready to do it, and I pulled out your ordinances, and there was a fuel cost adjustment. They go, you already got a fuel cost adjustment. We don't need one. And they go, well, we've never used that because that didn't generate any money, and we just figured we didn't need it anymore. And so we just quit applying it. Well, when the price was $3 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour, it wasn't generating much. But when the price went to $5, you guys were underwater on it. So So that was right at the time. So that's what a fuel cost adjustment does. Energy cost adjustment, purchase power cost adjustment is kind of the,
Yeah.
maybe quite honestly, maybe that's something we should change the name to purchase cost adjustment instead of fuel cost adjustment. But that's all we're doing here, so let's put a pin in that if we can. I hate to say that because I always make people laugh on that, but let's put a pin in that, and then because we're going to talk about this, and then we're really looking at overall cost.
Yep.
So when we come to structure and format and how it allocates between the groups, then we can maybe talk about that a little bit more if there's something else we want to do. But here's where you guys are at right now. So this is your all-in cost, which includes that fuel cost adjustment. It includes the base rates that I call base rates. That's your ordinance rate, and it also includes the customer charge. Everything in there, it rolls into here, and this shows you where you stack. So you're the red bar at the far left. This is your total monthly spend. It's a 12-month rolling average. And how we do this is we take a actual customer, residential customer, that's on the green bar over here. It used to be my house when I was in that area, and we modeled it on all these cities' rates, including yours, all these different cities, all the blue bars, and then your red one. We just ran it through. If that house was in those areas and everything was the same, that usage was the same, that's what those bills would be. So that kind of gives you an idea to show you how you would stack up with other cities. The dotted line is all of the average of all of those blue bars there, not the green one and the other ones over there, is the blue bars. So you're sitting there just right now, just a tiny bit above average for what that spend would be as compared to the other cities. But also, most importantly, is to look at the green bar, because that is Evergy Central, and that is what anybody who lived in Hutchinson or Salina, Winfield, or not Winfield, but Park City, any cities there would be paying that rate, paying more than they would be paying here. In addition, so that's a lot of the cities. So like a city like yourself, you might hear people are going to move out of the area and go to Hutchinson or go to Wichita. They're not going to go, if they're going to do that, they're not going for electric rates because their rates would be higher. They also have that green bar just recently filed for a rate increase for all of that area. They just got, they're in the middle of the rate case, but they filed for a 13% increase on top of that number, so that number was going to go quite a bit, but it's actually going to go up a little less than that because they didn't get all of it approved, but they're going to get at least a 10% increase on top of that. Right now, that hasn't got an effect yet, so it's not incorporated. So and several of these other cities have done the same thing you're doing tonight, so all of those bars are going up. And so you're going to see that. The other ones are some of the neighboring co-ops, and now we put Midwest Energy on there, and they're pretty low. They're in that cluster of colored bars there, they're the blue one. So that one's one that's kind of around here, but they're in the process of increasing their rates as well. So they've held theirs down quite a bit, but that's getting ready to change. So you can see that going up. So my point of this is this shows you a total monthly average rolling 12-month spend, and then the cost per kilowatt hour. Average monthly cost is right down, or average cost per month spend of there. That's the 12-month total spend, and that's the monthly spend average right there on the bottom line. And so the cost per kilowatt hour would be the chart right below that. But just want to show you guys aren't out of line of where your costs are. So,
is this with the new rate or with the?
No, this is with the old rate. Okay, I'm just showing you status quo where it is, of where you're at. So the new rate isn't in there yet. And then Elmer, you want to go to the next? Do we have one more chart or not? I think that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, we got the commercial.
Commercial, small commercial. I wanted to show you on the commercial. Same thing there. If you look at your commercial rate, which is very similar to your residential, but it's a little different. you have a residential and commercial rate, shows you that you're right about at the average of similarly situated municipals. You're well below where what a small commercial customer would pay, not just a commercial. So there's no small commercial that would pick up and leave and go to one of those communities because of your electric rates. So, okay. All right, that's just a little bit of background there. And Elmer, if you can go ahead and put your spreadsheet up, and I'm going to turn it over to you to go over the model that you put together.
Well, I overheard you saying that I had done a deep dive, and this kind of shows what I went about. I looked at the last 3 complete years at the time, which we started on this in late 24, so it was the complete years of 21 through 23 to come up with a base year projection. In other words, sometimes when you're running short of money, you really carve things to the bone, and once you get a rate increase, you're likely to return to what you consider normal operating. So I don't try and just say, oh, well, the last year you had was this nice low number, so we'll base everything on that. But I did try to talk with the staff and see where they considered a normal year to be when there was a lot of difference between years. And then coming up with a base year, then I projected forward with varying percentages. We all know that health insurance costs go up more rapidly than everything else, and I've got a 12% escalator in there. Got 8% in between 24 and 25 for personnel costs, just because the cost of living has been pushing things. And then assuming that they would moderate and improve on that going forward. Everything else is pretty much a 4% and then dropping down to 3.5%. Having analyzed all of that, as we did for the water fund, I then took the direct cost versus the indirect cost and allocated the indirect costs between your water function and your electric function. And we determined at the time that the biggest driving problem in the utility fund was the water ratings, and we addressed those a few months ago and said we'll hold on electric for now because they weren't showing any desperate need for change. But with the approximate excess of revenues that you were seeing in 2023, shrinking in 2024 down to next to nothing, and then in 25 projecting that there would be a loss and an increasing loss every year until rates are changed. So now is the time to address it. And on a consolidated basis, kind of a high-level view, looking at 24 final data, you were looking at a $15,000 excess of revenues on the electric portion of the fund and a $61,000 loss on the water side. So as you can see, it was important to get the water changes made as expeditiously as possible, and I think we did that this past spring. So now it's time to address the electric. In the projection, I'm looking at losses over here by year. A very small one would have been the projection at the time based on just 21 through 23, but we can kind of ignore that. You actually were a little bit excess revenues that year, but presumably the 25 numbers are going to be going the opposite direction, and you're going to have some loss here this year. I don't know whether it will be as big as this number or not, but based on the direction things are going, that's a reasonable guesstimate. And I have a proposal here for rates that would cover the first couple of years of those losses so that you would be in a stable state financially in the electric fund. Right now, you have a first block at a lower rate. That first block is 100 kilowatt hours, and your base charge is $6 for the meter. everything over that first block is 10.55 cents per kilowatt hour, and your first block rate is 8.9 cents. It's kind of a bargain on that first block, so that if somebody's a really low user, they don't get stung with the customer charge and a high rate on that first small block of use. My proposal for the first step to be implemented as expeditiously as possible is to increase the first consumption block to a little bit larger size, make it 200 kilowatt hours, increase the base charge for the meter to 1050, which is still well below Evergy, and a lot of other utilities. Right now, Evergy is at 1750. So you can see how much of a difference that is between what they charge and what your customers are paying. I'm proposing that the first block go to 10 cents, and the second, everything over that to go to 11 cents. The impact on a minimum consumption customer of just 100 kilowatt hours, that first block, is that they're going to see a $5.60 increase, primarily due to the increase in the base charge for the meter. For them, that's a fairly substantial percentage increase. But as you go up in consumption to larger amounts per month, and you get to, for example, the average customer, the average customer is going to see a $7.30 per month increase, and that's only a 6.9% increase. If you get to a much larger consumer, I modeled this all the way up to 2,000 kilowatts in a month. At 2,000 kilowatt hours in a month, they're going to see a $13 increase, and it's only a 4.5% increase over your current rate. I've got a second step, which I'm proposing that you would implement at the start of 2027. A third step that you would implement at the start of 2028, and a final step to implement at the start of 2030. By the time all of those steps have been gone through, you would be at 300 kilowatt hours in the base block, and the base block would be at 11 cents, which is the current rate, the proposed new rate for the excess, and then the extras rate would get to 12 cents. At the end of the process, the large consumer would have seen a 13% increase. The minimum consumption customers, unfortunately, kind of taking it on the chin as far as percentages are concerned, but it's a $12 increase there. The average customer is at an 18% increase by the time you've reached the end of the fourth step from now, and that's 5 years in the future.
That's a total, right, Elmarie? That's a total.
Yes, total. It's not year over year increase. It's from the beginning to the end. That's a 17.8% increase on that volume. Which, if you considered it as a, so much per year, it's a little over 3%.
And again, when she was mentioning losses, it just means you won't actually come in negative, you just won't make the transfer. You just won't have, this includes your targeted transfers to the general fund and targeted transfer to the reserve. If you didn't do anything, then you just reduce that transfer, then you'd have to, whatever your city requirements are, would need to be made up through some other change.
Yeah, those transfers are very important to the general fund.
Yeah, and it's a reason that utility provides to the community. So, but those are all built in there. So this is all designed to cover that. So to answer your question on the fuel cost adjustment, basically, like she mentioned, 10 cents a kilowatt hour. If you just took the 2 cents out, then you'd just have an adder of 8 cents, and then the fuel cost adjustment. I mean the fuel component of the Midwest Energy would just be what it is, and then you'd add 8 cents to it. So that's basically all it's doing. Inside of that, there is another. Some cities, people don't like to see that that fuel cost adjustment change, and so they move more of that cost into the base rates, and that way the fuel cost adjustment is a smaller number, but the rates are higher. You guys have a pretty good balance here. It's not a big portion of it, but to have zero in it, and some do that, you have zero in there, it's kind of like washing your hands. The cost is whatever it is, you're gonna pay that, and we just wanna make sure we get the piece on top of there. This allows us that, we'll put some of it in there, into the rates, so it's not all passed through. So the step thing is like I said, instead of like raising them 17% today and then be over earning for the next few years, this is a gradual increase. That's kind of what we think is good, and then it allows you every couple of years to review the numbers and forecasts and stuff. And if things change, inflation curbs down, and there's some of those increases that she showed you don't occur, then you could either avoid one of those future ones, and it'd be easier to pull those off the
Just
table.
delay it.
Yeah, delay
Or
it.
if things get worse than expected, you can do it earlier.
Right, but this way you've got the framework in place, and we take a review every year or two to see if it's still needed, and if it is, nothing's changed, and we were right on our projections, and just leave it in place. So that is essentially what it is, and you've got the ordinances there that we're projecting, and that shows you the steps and when they occur. That will meet those revenue requirements. If like the other thing that she didn't really mention, if you for some reason had some major expense come in, like the power plant or a storm takes it down, you certainly would draw out of your reserve, but to replenish that. If there was something that changed substantially, then you'd have to, this didn't address that. I mean, it does address the, a massive storm, because you're building your reserves off, because like anytime there's been any kind of damage, you have to restore it as soon as possible with your own funds, and then you can use it reimbursed. So, hopefully, to kind of illustrate that this is not out of line with what the industry is moving at, certainly the rates that are being charged and increased by others, this is fairly modest change. For a city that hasn't moved their rates for a long time.
What is a long time? How long has it been since we moved our rates?
2007,
When was it? 2007? Yeah.
that was the last time we increased it.
Yeah, so, again, with the fuel cost and the spikes, the way we do that, that didn't hurt us, but to go from 2007 did not change it.
So that sums up your presentation.
Yep,
So if I could summarize it, we need to do this, it's overdue,
yep,
and we need to project into the future for cost increases.
that's right, that's a good
Okay.
summary, that it needs to be done. If we don't do it, then we need to go to a dramatic different plan B. But recover the revenue the way you guys run your city, and you operate your utility in your city. After this year, as of this year, you're gonna not be able to continue to do that. And so, versus just do it this year and then turn around and do it again next year and then do it every year, and have to go through, look, we went ahead and projected out and put it in place that we feel will cover your costs through 2030 and, subject to, dramatic changes from that. So, in my opinion, it's never easy to do it, but it needs to be done. And you could, if you decided you didn't want to do a multi-year and just wanted to do this year, next year, or the first two, and we'll address it again in 2 years, that's fine. I just like putting that out to you guys, so we didn't have to do this right away. That was the whole plan to think about. So, we wanted to be here to answer any questions, but with Pam, it's been great to provide all the information. As you can see, we've line item by line item. We've looked at it very carefully. We wanted to make sure you guys weren't going to be out of line with what you've done. We wanted to make sure your costs weren't projected disproportionately high from what others have done. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And the staff's been great to work with and come up with numbers. So we're pretty confident that this is what needs to be done.
Well, I'm just reading these notes to say that our attorneys reviewed it, the ordinance, so.
Yeah, I didn't have any issues.
Now, the only other thing, I just want to put one thing in here, that on that ordinance, and this is another item, so I didn't want to muddy it up here, but the behind the meter ordinance, would you need to talk about that a little bit? That has nothing to do with this cost or anything like that. I just want to talk about it, so maybe we could.
What is it?
Well, okay. Well, what it is the change you guys, we put a reference in there that behind the meter, when you have behind the meter generation, currently we've done two different iterations. For a while there, we put a demand charge on the power that's generated and that's used at the time in order to capture some of the power that's being displaced by behind the meter. Because when you displace power behind the meter, you're not really reducing the fixed cost allocation. You still have the same wires and everything. All you're doing is reducing the kilowatt hours. So if you net it out, if you net it out, you're basically crediting somebody 12 cents a kilowatt hour for power that you guys, for that's everything you're charging for your power. You're netting that out, and they're basically your wholesale power that you didn't buy at 5 cents. You're turning around and buying from this person basically for 12.
And you're talking about someone that puts up solar panels.
Solar panels are winter. Yeah, solar panels are winter. Yeah. So what's happened on this? Okay, this has been a very. You guys have actually dealt with it for many years, but everybody else is dealing with it now. So you guys were way ahead of the curve on that one. But now Evergy is kind of leading the charge on this, not necessarily wanting to, but they are. That they had to, the way they got their charges, the way they were charging. They went all the way to the Supreme Court, contested that they were disproportionately charging the customers that had behind the meter. So they were kind of forced to allow netting of this metering. You guys are netting your source right now, but you don't have to. And the municipals are not required at this particular time. The only caveat that came out of this last hearing when they had this in the legislative session was they said, we will exempt the municipal cities from having to, from netting, requiring them to net meter like you guys are doing. As long as you don't charge for the power you do so, you don't charge more than you don't charge more than you're charging the other customers. Okay, so that was what it was said, so I changed the language in there to say we wouldn't do that, we wouldn't charge more than the other customers at this time. Now, it's gonna involve changing the interconnect standards, the way your policy, and we're not gonna do that tonight, but I was gonna draft that and basically specify that instead of netting, because you're not required to move to just buy the excess power, okay? So you can buy your average price per kilowatt hour that you guys buy your power, so for every kilowatt hour that's pushed back to you, you don't have to buy it. So you should just pay that person, anybody that's pushing it back, what you didn't have to buy. So that you sell them everything that they use, and you buy from them everything they push back to you. And that is capped. We're allowed by state statute to cap that at 4% of your total system, which you're not close to. But at some point, so that would be what I'm going to come back and suggest that we do. We change that ordinance from a netting to a buyback of excess.
And in your opinion, that's the best way to be proactive?
To be proactive, you guys have been proactive because
We'll continue to be proactive.
continue to be proactive, and you need to. You don't have to do anything, but the tide's coming where the way we're doing it is favorable to your customers. Your few customers are doing it, but it is also not necessarily fair to all your other customers because
So currently when they're generating more than they're using, it's spinning the meter backwards essentially?
essentially
Okay.
on paper, but essentially.
The meter is, because it's going backwards through the meter, right? The power?
So
Essentially,
if-
I don't know how that
Okay,
works.
this is a customer uses 1,000 today without anything. They put in some generation that generates 1,000. Okay, so they're generating 1,000 for that month, but it's at different times than they're using it. Okay, so it only displaces 500 of what they actually use. So now instead of reading 1,000 on your meter, you only read 500. That means 500 of it flowed back to your grid. And then you're taking that 500, regardless of when you got it, and you're turning around and just subtracting out the 500 that they were buying it, so they're actually buying 0, even though they actually bought 500. So that's where, so what I'm saying, we'll change it to the point of saying, go ahead and charge them just like every other customer that uses 500, and then the extra 500 that comes back to the system, you just pay that, you buy that, because that you avoided buying it from your supplier, and then we take whatever we bought it for, and then you put that in as basically a resource, just like any other power plant we would be buying power from. You would then just pay that back into your fuel cost adjustment as a purchase cost.
But does the meter actually, like, if they're generating, let's say they've used 500,
Right.
it's night, and they have a window.
No, the meter that we have out there record how much
500.
they receive from us and how much they generate.
So
And
it's
then at the
500.
end of the month, we got both of the readings and then
So
we
you know
subtract
how
them.
much they're generating?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And do you know at what times of days for the supply and demand aspect of it?
We don't. We do not. We do know approximately. If it's solar, it's obviously during the day.
Okay.
Okay. And and if it's wind, you don't know when it's windy. Doesn't look like it's generating now, but a few hours ago it might have been. So we don't know. You don't have any control over that. So that's kind of the downside of that, because you get that power regardless if you want it, need it. You have a minimum fixed price capacity. There may be times you're not even getting it. So you're essentially crediting that in there. And if you're long yourself, so if it's really mild temperature, I mean, like right now that's not happening because it's pretty hot. But if it was cool spring day and you have no load, and you're barely covering your fixed product that you're paying to buy, then essentially you're taking that power, and then you immediately, you being your supplier, is taking that and then selling that in the market, giving you credit back. So by the way you're doing it, you're taking that power, you're paying, because you're allowing them to net it off like Ben was talking about. You're basically paying that at the 12 cents. You might be selling it for 1.
So this way you're proposing, from what I'm hearing, it's more fair,
Right.
and that's what I'm
That's
looking
right.
for.
Yeah, it's
Because
more
if there's
fair.
no sense in people getting, it's
Everybody-
costing the city.
Yeah, you're
It's not fair.
you're not keeping the power
Yeah.
for free. You're paying it at your system average cost.
Got it.
So every kilowatt hour that you take, that's 1 kilowatt hour you didn't have to buy. You ought to compensate that generator just like any other generator that's Now, but on the other hand, if you're using power, then you just basically sold your power to us. So you're now consuming X amount of kilowatt hours, just like anybody else who doesn't have generation.
So you're gonna, so if it's 500 that they've used and 300 that they've generated, will they buy 800 from us and we give them the purchase credit back for the 300?
No, well, first of all, if they're generating it on their own load, the load just goes away. All right, so you don't forget that if you, so my example was that they're generating 1,000 during the month,
Yes.
and they normally would use 1,000. Okay,
Right.
so without the generator, they're using 1,000. The next month they have the generator. It generated 1,000, but 500 of that, they didn't have any load, so it came back to the system. The other 500 picked up their load, so that's why our meter didn't read 1,000, it read 500.
Yes.
Because that other 500 just went away because it got absorbed, which
Yes.
is what it's supposed to do.
Right.
Okay, so that covered their own load.
Yes.
All they bought was 500 now. They didn't buy 1,000 from us this month.
Oh, so when you say we're netting, if it's 500 and 300, they're only getting charged for 200.
Correct.
Oh.
Right.
Okay, so we'll be able to charge 500, but then buy back at the purchase.
Buy back the
Correct.
300
Yes.
At
whatever your
at
cost.
Evergy's.
Yes.
Well, Midwest Energy.
Or sorry.
Yeah, your avoided cost. Okay,
Yes.
because they gave you 300,
Yep.
you didn't have to buy it.
Yeah.
So you should pass that savings on to them.
But right now it's at the 11 cents or 10 or whatever
Yep.
it is. Okay.
Which means
That's why I was trying to.
Which it's
I was trying to get in my head. I was like, wait, we're gonna be giving them, but we're already charging them for 500.
No.
No.
And
Okay.
keep in mind, if we were doing exactly what you were saying originally at the very beginning, adding that piece in there, they would be avoiding that too, because right now they would be looking at their cost per kilowatt hour, or they'd have zero consumption if they just net that whole 500 out or whatever, so they wouldn't even be covering that, which
Yeah.
they're not doing now. So this is a way to, and quite honestly, this is like you said, this is what the recommendation is. The Evergy is being forced to apply a different arrangement. Cities are not, okay, but they were not because there was an agreement that cities would endeavor to make sure that amount, the 500 that they are paying, is exactly the same price as everybody else. And right now, I changed that ordinance to reflect the same price as everybody else.
Yeah, I saw.
So we'll need to move from the netting concept to the buy all your excess. Instead of just netting it, buy it.
The
Okay, so
different
that's-
rate that you're buying it back at.
That's right.
And that's what you're working on.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say, that ordinance does change that language that says that we're gonna treat every customer for all kilowatt hours the same. Okay, so nobody's being paid, right now, those customers are paying a larger customer charge. That's the only difference really, is there's a larger customer charge. And that evolved from just a certain time when you guys were, you were like the first city that had this going on. So this is correcting what the new direction is, and that's being encouraged as a community to charge the way you're supposed to charge. Be fair to those customers that are generating, but then not let everybody who's not generating subsidize that. That's-
Greg, quick question.
All right.
at peak operating times, when we got peak power, do you
Right.
still base it on peak times,
The price?
the price?
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's gonna be on
Okay.
your average, system average price at this time. Now, down the road, and larger installations across the country does have that hour to hour. So you're exactly right. So
Okay.
generally, peak prices are higher, right? And so the thought would be is if you're getting those in the middle of the day, they're worth more.
Right.
Okay. But generally, people are using more, so generally the push out occurs. Now certainly with solar, push out comes usually during the day because that's when they're generating all their load. But like on wind, you may be getting in the middle of the night or something when the price is really low. So it's an average price, so that
Okay.
there is a little bit of socialization there. There's no, I mean, at this time, with the way your metering is, there's no way to avoid that. So somebody who's producing more at night or in the off-peak times is gonna get the same price for somebody who's giving it to you during the day.
Okay.
But it makes sense to do it that way because we don't charge peak rate.
You
on our
don't.
utility, so like you wouldn't, it'd be confusing to buy back at peak rates.
Because you don't even know
Because we
what
don't
that,
charge at peak rates.
you don't even know what that, and your invoice says this was what your average for the month was, the
Yeah.
price. You don't know when you got that. So I'm just saying, we take that and we actually pay, because of what we just talked about, the recommendation is you buy it back at 1.5 times the cost of your average price. So that way everybody's being more than fair. And I'll go into that later, the next time we do this, when I bring back with the policy procedure, so you guys can walk through it. The other thing is there's a recommendation on how you calculate the maximum install amount, all right? So, there's a formula to calculate that is designed to say, we'll take back the amount that comes back to us like we're just talking about, but we don't want you to build like this massive ground mount thing that we don't have any control over. You could sell it to other people, you could sell it to us and just dump it. So we're saying it's got to be a reasonably sized unit that, yeah, you'll push back some, other times you'll be short, buy from us, but it's designed to cover your load, not more. We didn't ask you to put in a unit to provide power to the city because unless we're in partnership with them where we're actually know when we're getting it, we're getting a certain share. Right now, we just get it whenever you decide, one, to not use it yourself, or two, push it back to us. So we're saying, so the other thing I want to include in this package that comes back to you will be that methodology, how that's the approved methodology for establishing a maximum amount that you guys could allow. So you can decline anybody who puts, now what I said, anybody who's got it in there now, you almost have to grandfather that. But anybody going forward, you say you can't put more than this amount. And that'll keep the amount of what we're talking about to a smaller level because there's just not gonna be a lot pushing out.
How much more time is needed for you to come back to us with what you're working on?
Days, not months.
Oh, okay.
You know, I mean, because, and the reason I say that, and Pam, I'm sorry, because she did send it over, your existing one over to me, and I hope to have it done today. But, and the reason I can, it's not heavy lifting, because it is a template that's been approved for the cities to use, and all I need to do is change it for your specific information. So, had I had just a little bit more time, I would have brought it today. So I went ahead and changed the ordinance, because that's all we need to speak for. And so, well, this thing just speak, it's the package, you've already got it in there that requires the notification and the thing, but it's been updated. That was in 2016 that we filed that. End of 2024, they've settled this in the last legislative session, and this came out right in early 2025. So we've got a new template, but very similar to what you got, but it speaks to how the buying it back and all of that.
Got it.
So I'll have that to you. I mean,
I wasn't pressing you, I was just curious, because I just like getting things handled.
Yeah, it'll get handled.
Not like losing it.
It would have been handled if I had another day. Dave.
No, no judgment.
So sorry about that, but we'll get that to you for the next meeting.
Well, I learned a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Well,
it.
glad. If you, sometimes I get accused, and usually when I get home, my wife always asks me how many people I put to sleep. And I,
Zero.
Zero tonight.
Zero
I'm
tonight.
glad to see it. Zero. I can report to zero. But it is important, and I appreciate you guys listening. And we want to go through it, and I just want you guys to be sure that we did it. It wasn't something that we didn't look at every single thing.
That's good. That's good.
You guys have any more questions?
Council got any more, go ahead.
No. I
Council
was-
got any more questions for Greg?
I know. Did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, you both did. You both did.
That being said, thanks, Greg.
Okay, will you take action on it tonight, or?
Yeah.
I think so. Probably here shortly.
All right. Well, do you need me here anymore, or?
I don't think so.
Council,
so.
want him to stick around?
I mean, if there, what?
I asked the council if he
Yeah.
wanted Greg to stick
I
around.
don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you, so you can get home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great, but if not, I'm more happy to stop it, or if you have any last minute calls, I'll be on the road.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Danny, you've looked the ordinance over and
Yep.
agreed with it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Just pick up and hang up.
Council got any discussion that
Have a
they
good
want?
night. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Council got any discussion they wanna make between themselves? Looks to me like it's gotta be done.
Yeah, I don't mind the step
Concur.
rate. I think, looking at their numbers, I mean, I don't know if we're gonna see as big of increases on percentages. It feels like we've been overly inflated on the last few years. So it's hard for me to believe that like health insurance costs will go up 12% for 5 more years straight. Like seems unsustainable. Could be wrong.
Right.
But I think what is nice with the step approach is that once 2030 hits, I think we're going to see either that we're able to do some more like underground projects and charge it, we can start improving our system rather than maintaining our system with the extra funds, and then it kind of breaks out even. Or we'll see that we're still doing well and we can cover a few more years at the rate that we're at and not do a rate increase for a few years after that. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah. To be determined.
Yeah, he was bringing two options, and I went ahead and just disregard the other one, because I feel like that was a big jump for the citizen at one time, so we came up with the stair step method, so I figure you don't like the big increase.
Is this the ordinance?
Correct.
1125, I believe.
Correct. Everybody's okay? Make a motion to approve ordinance number 1100-25, amending the electric utility rates.
Second.
Let it show Aaron Raines made a motion on ordinance number 1125. Aaron Gleason seconded it. Any more discussion on the table? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0.
Attached to your package is the most updated version of the ordinance to take out the subcharge and increase the capital improvement to $12. Added the date that we talked about the last meeting. If you guys don't see any other changes that needed made, then this warrant is ready to be passed.
It was just that.
Ken? Danny, did you review this one as well?
Yep,
It was just the effective August 1st, wasn't it?
yeah,
Correct.
adding that to cold water on the,
And
yeah,
cold water.
step one. Or yeah, add,
The date for the $12 fee.
Correct.
yep,
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1099-25 to amend the water rates.
Second.
Got a motion on the table on ordinance 1099-25 by Aaron Gleason, a second by Aaron Raines. Any more discussion from the table? All in favor? All opposed? Passes 5-0.
And then, the resolution, I emailed it to you guys, and there's a copy on that table if you guys print out your own packet. There is the questions that, not Sid, but I can't remember, Kevin from, Gilmore and Bell, that's the bond company, sent over what they did for the school, and Danny also sent over the draft resolutions of the 1% sales tax, the question. So, if you guys have any changes, concern, questions regarding that, he can answer it.
and on this, it looks a little different than the question that I had here for you guys. Part of that, we got the exact language on what school project's doing, so in subsection B, just put that in word for word, what the school bond issue was. And then added, I had one giant long run-on sentence, and I didn't think that made it clear or particularly helpful trying to look at it, so I broke it up. Did kind of the first question and then a description of how the 1% would be divided down below. I did add the line in the very first paragraph after shall the city authorize, put the sales tax shall only be implemented upon the approval of the district electors of a proposition authorizing the issuance of the district bonds. Trying to make it as clear as possible with that this is only effective if the bond issue passes.
So on the ballot, is this resolution saying all of this will be on the ballot or just the question?
All of that would be one question, or that all would be on there.
On the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, section.
Is that allowed? I guess normally you see those questions as just a long run-on sentence
Yeah.
question. Is it allowed to have that underneath it?
Yeah, it has to accurately state what the question is and not try to sway people with the way it's worded. And I think this is more accurate than if I mash this all into one long paragraph with a question mark at the end.
Yeah.
But I had to look at that because it is, I mean, everyone that you see
I'll say
is
most
one.
time it's a one long sentence that you're
Yeah.
like, wait, what exactly am I doing?
And I really didn't want to do that because
Yeah.
you read those and by the time you get to the end of it, you think, what did I just read?
Right. Sure.
And so,
Read all of it, if only read the first half.
yeah. So I don't know that there's a good way to do them, but just the way my mind works, this looked cleaner than that.
Do I need to notify the county clerk that we want it in there as is? Or does she know that if I submit this, this is how it's gonna go on the ballot? Cause like you said, most questions that we see is
Yeah.
all just one big paragraph. Like,
I'd probably take a couple copies of this over if the resolution passes, and then I'd highlight all this and say
Okay.
we want this highlighted
all
section.
on the question,
ballot.
okay.
Yeah. And then I couldn't find anything, Kyle, I think you'd ask if it has to be 90-10. I couldn't find anything on that. It looked like the language of the school proposed was 100% was going to the school. So I left it 90-10, but I can't find any authority that says it has to be that way.
Do you think it is redundant for us to list the specifics of the bond? Like, because that's also on the exact same ballot.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, can you just cut it off at To assist district in the repayment of principal and interest on district general obligation bonds
Right.
issued to pay costs to acquire, construct, equip, and install additions, renovations, and improvements, period. Because the bond itself explains what those are.
I almost did that, trying to figure out where the stopping point was on that,
Yeah.
and I thought it was safer just to have it all in there.
Okay.
But
They're probably gonna be one question after the other and you get done
Yeah.
reading their long run sentence, and then you come to this
Yeah.
one and you're like, wait, is this the exact same thing?
right, and that's I almost like I wanted to stop it after where they defined it as the district bonds.
Yeah.
Basically just to pay the principal and interest or help repay the principal and interest on those. But I thought, the point is to give as good notice as you can on this is what we're voting on.
Yeah.
Then including everything that they're saying they're using those for. Does that. But yeah, if we didn't have to include everything, we could say it in a lot less words and it would probably make more sense. Reading it.
I think that while this is definitely a lot more than what I've seen on a ballot in the past, I think this really does explain it for everyone. In my opinion, it's plain and clear. Not everyone is going to look at it the way I do, but I think that this is what you do, and I think you did a fine job on this.
What's the scenario? Okay, so we've set the same dates as the bond issue, and then we're very clearly stating that 90% of that is for that specific bond. Let's say 10 years down the road, there's $11 million left on the bond, and the state or federal government passes some huge grant to help, like, let's say specifically rural communities pay off debt, like we did with the water plant. Now that wasn't $11 million, but let's say, we get to 2040 and that bond is paid in full. Since this was specific to that, does 9/10 still need to go to the school for bond repayment? I mean, like, yeah, what would that look like? Because we've set a date specific.
Yeah. I think the city can amend this by an ordinance after it's passed. I don't think it has to go back to another ballot question. So I think in that scenario, council can pass an ordinance where you'd set out, this was passed to help repay these bonds. Some other source of funding came in, paid off the bonds 10 years early. Now we're amending the ordinance and put this in place to allow, the full 1% to go to the city to be used for these purposes, or maybe there's something else that would be there. But I think that's,
If that can be changed with an ordinance, then what's the purpose of stating the 9/10 and 1/10 as part of this?
well, if that was, we were talking,
I mean, I agree, like, I wanna nail it down, but if that can just be simply changed next year on the ordinance.
I think it can, I'm not 100% sure on that. I know when I looked at the original 1%, I thought that's what I saw was that if that purpose needs to be changed, the council can do it by ordinance. One, I think the point of stating it in here is you're asking people to vote for against the 1% sales tax with the intention that 90% of it's going to the school.
Yeah.
So putting that in the question rather than saying, we'll give some to the school if you pass this.
Sure. It's clear
on
that that's.
And then the same thing too, where, even if it can be changed, at least if it's passed and it's approved, it should be a harder decision to overturn it for a future council to say, yeah, the voters voted on this, they approved using it for this purpose, but we want to change it anyways. But I'm not, I think the context that I was general one that didn't necessarily have a set purpose in the ballot question, rather than one that was had it more specific like this and what it would take to undo that. So I'm not 100% sure if I'm right that it's you have to provide ordinance or if it's a more detailed set to undo that.
I mean, I think it's as clear as day that it's for that specific bond, so if that gets paid off, I think you would even have an argument to say that 9/10 of that 1% that passed would just go away.
Yeah.
And that the other 41% would be effective until the date if you want.
It's one that a specialty sales tax would make more sense for, except that limit that it has to hit after 10 years.
Because then it would just expire because it's special. Yeah. No, that was my only question.
No, it's a good
I can
question.
pray that that happens. That'd be nice
Yeah,
for all the
right.
taxpayers. Although it's just one pocket to the other
Right.
from different party government.
Now you get into more pockets though, if it's something.
Yeah, it's spread out.
So what's the next step?
If you guys want to put this on the ballot, then you'd pass this resolution.
I make a motion to pass resolution number 2025-14, authorizing a ballot question to go on the ballot November 4th to ask the constituency to impose a 1% citywide sales tax to be split 1/10 to the city and 9/10 to the school district for bond repayment.
We've got a motion on the table made by Aaron Gleason. Anybody want to entertain a second?
Seconded already.
Mark second.
Got a second on the table for Mark Bryant. Any more discussion before we vote on it? With no more discussion, all in favor? All opposed? Passes 3-2.
I make a motion to adjourn special council meeting July 23rd, 2025.
Second?
Got a motion on the table by Aaron Gleason to terminate the meeting, and a second by Mark Bryan. Any more discussion? All in favor? All
Good
opposed?
evening, everybody.
Meeting is over.